Come closer. The shadows have missed you, and tonight they have a new story to tell. Welcome to Scary Stories After Dark. The night in hollow sleep hummed with the sound of insects and the faint creak of the old covered bridge. Lanterns swayed in the October wind, their orange glow spilling crooked halos across the road where no cars passed. The town had long ago renamed itself, carving its identity from the legend of the Headless Horseman like it was scripture. And tonight the legend stirred. Marlowe Jensen walked home from the tavern with a muttered curse on his lips. His boots struck the boards of the bridge in uneven rhythm, each step echoing into the trees like a warning drum. He had mocked the town's obsession earlier that evening, loud enough that everyone heard. He always did. No ghost runs hollow sleep, he'd slurred. Just fools who hang pumpkins on their porches. The wind rose, the lanterns flickered. Something shifted in the woods beside him. Not a deer, not a branch cracking, something heavier, deliberate. Marlowe paused, breath frosting in the cold. He turned, but the trees were just silhouettes stitched against a rising fog. The sound of hooves followed. Not the steady gallop of a horse on the move, but a slow, measured tread. One step, then another. Then silence. Marlowe's heart hammered. He whispered a curse, faster now across the bridge, trying not to run, trying not to look. But when he reached the far end, a shadow uncoiled from the fog. Broad shoulders, taller than any man, carrying something long and gleaming in the faint lantern light. Marlowe opened his mouth to speak, but the figure surged forward with inhuman speed. The axe fell once. Silence after. Lanterns rocked in their hooks as the fog curled tighter around the bridge. And on the damp boards beside the pool of darkening blood, a small object was left behind. Hand-carved, no larger than a child's toy. A wooden horse, its legs locked mid-gallop. Clemmy pressed her forehead against the cold glass of the diner window and sighed. Outside, Main Street glowed orange. Every lamppost had a jack-o'-lantern leering from it, their crooked grins lit from within by flickering bulbs. Paper horse silhouettes stampeded across storefront windows, and from somewhere down the block, the local marching band practiced Dance Macabre for the Halloween parade. God, it's like the whole town puked pumpkins, she muttered. Finn slid into the booth across from her, dropping his tray hard enough to rattle the ketchup bottle. Correction, hollow sleep puked pumpkins. We're the only psychos in America who renamed our town after a ghost that never even showed up. Yet, Lennon added as he joined them, always the quiet echo. He brushed damp hair from his eyes and nodded toward the street. You know they say this year's the bicentennial of the Horseman's curse, right? Everyone's freaking out more than usual. Clemmy rolled her eyes. Everyone's always freaking out. Every year it's the same. Plastic skulls, tourist traps, people pretending the Headless Horseman is watching from the cemetery. He's not. He's a fairy tale, a marketing stunt, whatever. Finn stabbed his straw into his soda and leaned back with a grin. Amen. I'd take a zombie apocalypse over another round of horseman cosplay. At least zombies don't need parade floats. They all laughed, the sound muffled by the greasy diner air, but outside, the laughter didn't carry. The fog was already starting to roll in from the river, wrapping itself around the bridge like a waiting hand. Cleamy drummed her fingers against the table. "You guys hear about Marlo Jensen?" she asked, softer now. Lennon nodded. "Dead on the bridge. They found him this morning." Finn frowned. "I thought he just passed out drunk, like always." "No," Clemmy said. She lowered her voice. "There was blood, a lot of it, and someone left a carving, like a wooden horse." They sat in silence, the diner lights buzzing above them. The parade posters on the walls suddenly felt too bright, too cheery, as if they were mocking the three of them for doubting. Finally, Finn smirked, forcing the mood lighter. "Probably some weirdo with a whittling knife trying to get attention. Serial killers are lame anyway, takes no skill." "Yeah," Clemmy said, but her voice lacked conviction. She glanced outside again at the fog tightening around Hollow Sleep. For the first time in her life, she wondered if the town's obsession wasn't just a joke. The sheriff's cruiser idled at the edge of the cemetery, its red and blue lights washing across crooked headstones. A small crowd had gathered behind the tape, their whispers carrying like moth wings in the cold air. Clemmy, Finn, and Lennon lingered at the back, straining for a glimpse. "Second one this week," Lennon murmured, voice flat. Finn let out a low whistle. "Guess our guy's on a schedule. At this rate, he'll run out of townsfolk before Halloween even gets here." Clemmy elbowed him. "Not funny." Her gaze locked on the gurney as two deputies heaved it into the back of the coroner's van. She couldn't see much. The sheet covered the body, but she saw the blood, too much of it. Then she saw something else. An officer lifted a small evidence bag, holding it high enough for the crowd to notice. Inside sat a carved wooden bridge, tiny and perfect, its planks scored with careful lines. The whispers grew louder. "First a horse," someone said. "Now the bridge." Clemmy's stomach twisted. Later, back at the diner, the three of them huddled in their booth, the smell of fryer oil and coffee doing nothing to shake the unease clinging to them. "Okay," Finn said, tearing into his burger with too much force. "So some psycho's leaving toys at the crime scenes. Big deal. Doesn't mean it's the Horseman." Lennon sipped his soda, eyes distant. "Horse, bridge, what's next? The cemetery? The axe?" "Stop," Clemmy snapped. She rubbed her temples. "It's just some freak copying the legend to mess with people." "Or," Finn said with a grin too wide to be genuine, "it's the actual Headless Horseman back to slice and dice Hollow Sleep, which would be way cooler, by the way." Clemmy didn't laugh. Neither did Lennon. Outside, fog began to slide down Main Street, thick as milk, curling against the diner windows. The glow of jack-o'-lanterns flickered in and out of sight, as if the whole town were blinking. And somewhere in that fog, someone watched. From the killer's perspective, the world was sharper. He could hear the crunch of every leaf under his boots, smell the iron sting of blood still drying on his gloves. The carving knife rested warm in his pocket, its work unfinished. They didn't understand. They would. soon. The town refused to slow down. By the third murder, Hollow Sleep looked like a carnival in full bloom. Pumpkin towers, fake gallows built for photo ops, hay rides rolling past streets where blood still stained the pavement. The mayor called the killings isolated incidents during his press conference, promising extra patrols and reassuring tourists it was safe to enjoy the season. But the townsfolk whispered, and every whisper circled back to the wooden figures. Clemmy, Finn, and Lennon stood on the sidewalk outside the general store, watching as deputies strung yellow tape across the alley. Another body. Another carving, this time a tiny wooden pumpkin with a hollowed center and jagged mouth. "That's 3, Lennon said flatly. His hands were shoved deep in his hoodie pocket, eyes dark. Finn shook his head. Horse, bridge, pumpkin. This psycho's working through the legend like it's a checklist. Clemmy swallowed hard. She thought about Marlo Jensen on the bridge, about the cemetery everyone swore the horseman's ghost visited each October. "What happens when he runs out of things to carve?" she whispered. Finn forced a laugh. "Then he retires, opens a craft booth at the fall festival." Neither Clemmy nor Lennon smiled. That night, the fog rolled in earlier than usual, swallowing street lamps until they glowed like drowning stars. The trio huddled in Clemmy's basement, surrounded by old movie posters and the faint buzz of her dad's record player. "Okay," Lennon said, leaning forward, "we need to think. Who actually has the skill to carve like that? They're perfect, detailed." "Mr. Brigham," Clemmy said immediately. "Shop teacher. He lives alone, kind of weird." Finn snorted. "Or maybe your librarian crush," he teased. "Bet he whittles between shelving gothic poetry." "Shut up." Clemmy hurled a pillow at him, but her cheeks burned. Still, the thought twisted in her stomach. They all knew people in town who could fit. Too many. Somewhere across Hollow Sleep, the killer worked in silence. The knife moved in his steady grip, curls of wood falling onto a dark floor. Each cut shaped another fragment of the horseman's legend, the story inching closer to completion. He could hear their laughter, their doubt. It would end soon. The blade slipped once, biting into his finger. Blood smeared across the carving, sinking into its grooves like ink. Perfect. By the time October 28th crept in, Hollow Sleep was a town divided. Half clung to the festival, the parades, the haunted hayrides, the candlelit tours through the cemetery, while the other half locked their doors before dark, whispering about the horseman returning to claim his due. 3 deaths had become 4, another carving left behind, this one shaped like a coffin, its lid slightly ajar. Clemmy, Finn, and Lennon sat in the diner again, each nursing mugs of coffee gone lukewarm. The place was emptier than usual. Most folks stayed home now. "Okay," Finn said, dropping his voice. "We all saw Brigham leave the cemetery last night, late. He's got to be our guy. Who else hangs around the graveyard at midnight?" "Caretaker," Lennon said. "Obviously, and Brigham's been teaching shop since before we were born. Everyone's got a hobby." "Serial killing isn't a hobby," Clemmy muttered. She glanced toward the counter where the librarian, Mr. Doyle, sat alone, head bent over a stack of books. His hands were steady, pale, the kind of hands that could carve smooth lines into wood. She felt a chill. What about him? Lennon followed her gaze. Clemmie's boyfriend, Finn teased under his breath. She scowled. Shut up. But her eyes lingered on Doyle's fingers as he turned a page, too careful, too precise. That night, Lennon insisted on showing them something. He led Clemmie and Finn through the fog-drowned backroads until the streetlights ended and the trees grew thick. There, perched on the town's edge, loomed a mansion the three of them had only ever whispered about. Its windows were black, its spires jutted against the swollen moon like broken teeth. The iron gates stood wide, rusted open as though waiting for them. My dad says the original founder built it, Lennon said. But nobody lives there now. People say it's cursed, that the horseman rides from here when the veil thins. Finn laughed, though it was strained. Of course he does. Big spooky mansion on a hill. It's basically horror law. But Clemmie couldn't laugh. The fog was thicker here, clinging to her shoes like something alive. And when she peered at the gate, she swore she saw a wooden carving hanging from the bars, a jack-o'-lantern crudely hacked, mouth gaping. Elsewhere, the killer worked, the knife carved without pause, shaping not just wood, but intention. The next figure waited in his hands, its edges sharp, its face grinning. He hummed while he worked, a low sound lost between human breath and something older. The mansion would open soon. The horseman would ride. Hollow Sleep should have been alive with carnival music and porch lights. Instead, the streets were near empty, jack-o'-lanterns burning lonely on stoops while their carved grins sagged in the fog. Another body had been found, another carving left behind. This one, a headless rider astride a horse, its axe raised. The town couldn't ignore it anymore. Clemmie, Finn, and Lennon stood outside the high school gym where the festival committee had gathered. Inside, parents shouted over one another, debating whether to cancel the parade, the cemetery tour, even Halloween itself. They won't stop it, Finn muttered. Too much money in plastic pumpkins and ghost tours. They'll march us all straight into the grave if it means keeping the tourists happy. Lennon didn't answer. He was staring at a man across the street, Mr. Doyle, the librarian, again, his hands shoved in his coat pockets, watching the crowd with an expression too calm for the chaos. Clemmie followed Lennon's gaze, heart thudding. She wanted to dismiss it, laugh it off, but unease coiled inside her. She remembered Doyle's careful fingers turning pages, imagined them holding a carving knife instead. That night, the three of them crept back to the mansion. The fog was worse here, spilling across the lawn in thick curtains. The iron gates still gaped open. Finn tried to joke. Great idea, Lennon. Midnight stroll to Dracula's summer home. But his voice shook. Inside, the air was colder than outside. The walls smelled of mildew and char. Their flashlights jittered over portraits with eyes scratched out, hallways that bent too sharply, and furniture left under dust shrouds like corpses waiting to rise. Then Clemmie saw it. On the grand staircase, a wooden figure rested on the banister. A coffin, smaller than her palm, lid closed this time. She reached for it, but before her fingers touched, a noise rattled through the mansion, hoofbeats. Distant, muffled, but heavy enough to make the dust tremble from the rafters. They froze. The sound grew louder. Closer. "Tell me that's not real," Finn whispered. No one answered. From the killer's perspective, the mansion was alive. The walls pulsed with fog. The horse pawed the ground, unseen, restless. He stood at the threshold, the axe waiting, the carvings complete. Tomorrow was Halloween. Tomorrow he would ride. The town of Hollow Sleep lit up like it always did on October 31st. Lanterns glowed from every porch. The parade floats rolled down Main Street, horses pulling wagons while costumed children waved candy buckets in the air. Music blared, fog machines hissed. But beneath it all, the crowd whispered about the murders, about the carvings, about the man on the bridge with his head nearly cleaved in two. The celebration marched on because it had to, because this was Hollow Sleep, and without the horsemen, they were nothing. Clemmy, Finn, and Lennon pushed through the crowd, every face strange in mask or paint. Clemmy's chest was tight. She couldn't stop thinking about the hoofbeats in the mansion, about the wooden coffin waiting for them. "Something's gonna happen tonight," Lennon said. Finn barked a laugh, too loud. "Gee, you think? 4 murders weren't enough of a hint?" But his eyes darted across the parade floats nervously. Then came the scream. The music faltered. People turned. At the far end of Main Street, a horse reared up out of the fog, massive black, eyes burning with unnatural fire. Its rider loomed taller than any man, broad shoulders cloaked, axe glinting under the parade lights. The Headless Horseman had come to Hollow Sleep. Panic split the crowd, families scattered, candy buckets hitting the pavement and spilling sweets into the gutter. The floats broke apart as the horse plowed through them, the rider's axe swinging down. Blood sprayed, lanterns shattered. Clemmy grabbed Finn's arm, screaming, "Run!" Through the chaos, the trio tore back toward the mansion. It felt as if the fog itself herded them, pushing them deeper into the horseman's domain. Inside, the mansion had changed. The halls groaned, walls bending inward like ribs closing around a heart. Wooden carvings lined the staircases and mantels, pumpkins, coffins, horses, all smeared with fresh blood. And they weren't alone. From the shadows crept other shapes. Monsters twisted from Halloween lore, faceless scarecrows dragging sickles, black dogs with eyes like coals, pale children with mouths sewn shut. The horsemen had called them, born from every story Hollow Sleep had ever whispered. Finn swung a broken chair leg, knocking one creature back. "What the hell is happening?" "It's the legend," Lennon shouted, shoving a door shut against clawed hands. "It's all of it. He's bringing it to life." Clemmy's gaze fell to the grand staircase. There, in the horseman's own hand, gleamed the final carving. A bridge cracked down the middle. She understood then. The figures weren't trophies. They were spells. Each one a piece of the legend, feeding him, bringing him closer to whole. And now he was complete. From the killer's perspective, there was no longer separation between man and myth. The possession was finished. his human body burned away in shadow, replaced by armor, by horseflesh, by the weight of the axe. He was legend made flesh, terror made real. Hollow sleep belonged to him now. The mansion shook with every hoofbeat. Glass rattled in the windows, dust rained from the rafters, and the fog outside pressed tight against the walls like a living thing. Clemmy, Finn, and Lennon scrambled through the warped corridors, chased by shadows with burning eyes. The horseman's axe cleaved through doors and splintered banisters as he came for them, relentless. They burst into the grand hall. The carvings were everywhere now, nailed to the walls, scattered across the floor, suspended from the ceiling like grotesque ornaments. All of them pulsed faintly, as though alive. Clemy's breath caught. The carvings, they're what's holding him here. Finn snatched one from the floor, a wooden pumpkin, and smashed it against the wall. It splintered. The nearest monster shrieked, collapsing into a heap of rot. "It works!" Lennon shouted. The three tore into the carvings, smashing, stomping, breaking them apart. Each one destroyed seemed to unravel another nightmare, the black dogs dissolving into smoke, the faceless scarecrows withering into dust. But the horseman only grew angrier. He swung his axe, splitting the hall's long table in two. His horse reared, hooves striking sparks against the floor. "You'll never break them all?" Finn gasped. "There's too many." Clemmy's eyes shot to the staircase. At the very top stood the last carving, the cracked bridge, glowing with a sickly orange light. "That's the heart," she whispered. The horseman roared, headless and hollow, surging toward her as she bolted for the stairs. Finn and Lennon tried to hold him back, swinging whatever they could grab, but the horseman's strength was inhuman. Clemmy reached the carving. Her hands trembled as she lifted it. She could feel it thrumming, alive with centuries of fear and blood. The horseman's axe swung up, ready to fall. With a scream, Clemmy smashed the carving against the banister. It shattered. The mansion erupted in a sound like 1,000 screams at once. The fog imploded, sucking backward into the walls. The horseman staggered, shadows tearing from his form like peeling skin. His horse collapsed into smoke, his armor split apart into rusted shards. And then silence. The three of them stood gasping in the ruin of the hall. The carvings were gone, the monsters gone, only broken wood and blood remained. Outside, dawn broke through the fog for the first time in weeks. But as they stumbled from the mansion, Clemmy glanced back once. On the staircase banister, where the final carving had been, a single splinter of wood remained. Its shape was faint, rough, but unmistakable. A horse, mid-gallop. Her heart sank. The legend was never destroyed, only broken apart. And legends always find a way back. The end. For now.